Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Conversations with Coaches podcast. It's your host, Kevin, and I am once again delighted to have Jaime Martin coming back for another conversation. She is a delight. I'm already a bit delighted. We chatted for what felt like 90 seconds and turned out to be over 10 minutes before I even hit record, which I expect this interview to also fly right by. Let me reacquaint you with Jaime before we get going again. Jaime is a life and leadership coach who partners with people who have been going so long that they've lost themselves. Working with Jaime, her clients own their power while doing the uncomfortable things they've dreamed of doing. I love that juxtaposition, doing the uncomfortable things they've dreamed of doing, right there in the same sentence. Feels that way, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Jaime spent 17 years in technology, with most of it in a state of denial, overwhelmed, exhaustion. I know we all feel that. She knew it wasn't what she wanted in life, but was in denial of what she wanted to do. She loved the idea of building things for people. The engineer in her wanted to make people's lives better by building great products. However, something was always missing. But I loved the way you the way you represent yourself, the way you set yourself up in our first conversation. I was quite taken with your transition, the creativity of your engineering as it's being applied to like building lives for yourself and for others. You invented words on the fly. Incubating was awesome. I still remember that. So Jaime, I'm tickled to have you back. Long story short,
I'm excited. I'm excited to be here. And I'm just, it's funny. I was actually just reading, one of my dear friends from engineering school is in the same zone of recreating his life. And we worked together last year and he just sent me a cover letter. And when you talked about the pulling in engineering and creativity, like his cover letter was all about that, was pulling in this beautiful thing. I'm getting tingles because I'm so excited for him because I know what's next for him. And I've seen so many engineers get pigeonholed into this is how things work and this is what we're supposed to do. And that's not what engineering is by any stretch of the imagination. Engineering is about being creative. You have to be a creative problem solver on things that no one's looked at before, and try to solve it in a new way and try to be innovative and incubating.
It's so like
had to put it in there.
You had to work it in, and it's so easy for people outside and inside of engineering to slip into a sort of machine-like analogy for their thinking and for their value, where it's like I am just executing processes. When that couldn't be farther from the truth. Obviously, there's a you must be this high to ride. Like you have to know how things work in order to ask the right questions to solve the problems that are in need of solving. When you really just take one step back, one half step back and look at it, you realize how much it is like coaching, where you really are just evaluating what the right questions to ask are and then going about figuring out how to solve them yourself and solve them with someone, solve them together with the person that you're coaching, with the team you're coaching, with the organization you're coaching. And it really is like, it's amazing how quickly it becomes apparent that it's the same process, just expressed differently. And it's driven by that creativity and that care. And that
curiosity. The curiosity is so huge because I think that that's the one thing I really took away from my engineering education was that there was no one way to solve a problem. And even in coaching, right, I can have people come to me and like, just tell me how to get from point A to point B. And I'm like, but I can't. Your life is so much different than the last person I just coached. We may be talking about very similar problems, but how you're approaching the fears that are coming up, the container you're holding in your life is so different. So we have to actually start to peel it back and peel it back even more. And, one of the things when we started talking, we were talking about like the exciting things that are showing up in the world of coaching and each coach being excited. And I've been really looking at our beliefs and our fears and the things that are so scary to us that we don't let them show up. And I actually had it happen to me. I've been working with my own coach and I had it happen to me, about a month ago. And I literally I wanted to hide when it showed up. I was like, I want to hide from this. It was
good sign.
Very dark belief. And I knew it was rooted in a long, long history of stuff. But when I finally looked at it, it disempowered it. I mean, it took a while, but it's like when you're dealing with a toddler and they're scared and you're flashing a flashlight on it, and you're kind of like, look, there's no monster in the corner. It's just your teddy bear. And they calm down. It's like, you got to look at it. But the thing that I've noticed over years and years of coaching, and even years and years of engineering, we don't want to look at it.
In the dark, it could be anything. And because it could be anything, it's terrifying in this unknowable way. And you're not on the hook to do anything about it because you don't know what it is. And that's where that sort of like why people sometimes like to preserve that darkness a little bit, because you don't have to act if it could just be anything. It's this amorphous, unknowable, terrifying thing. Once you shine the light on it, whatever it is becomes apparent. And it could be as simple as a teddy bear that you're just like, maybe the teddy bear doesn't look at you today, and we'll turn the teddy bear away from you so its eyes aren't on you, or just a teddy bear, and then the fear dissipates entirely because it's like, oh, what I'd made up in my head was actually nothing at all. And sometimes there are real things out there in the dark that are like, okay, I'm going to have to work on this. Like, this is scary and maybe dangerous, but I know what it is now, and I can start the work. And and then everything in between. And it's like, but it's just a matter of choosing to shine the light and having some help and how to direct that light.
And how to direct it. And I've been looking at it from the container, like you said, having a container to hold you in that space, because that's the one thing that allowed me to shine the light on that belief. Because had I not had the containers of my own coach and dear friends who have been in the conversation with me, I was really looking at my own vulnerability within, I'm going to be completely vulnerable myself right now, sexuality and sex in general. And the belief that showed up was not one I liked. But I have friends who help hold that container for me so I could kind of like look at it. And they were like, well, Jaime, what about this? And what about that? And my coaches did the same things. Like, let's look at this from all sorts of different angles. And being in that safe space and not doing it on my own really allowed that fear to be like, okay, I've got someone holding my hand.
It feels like there's like a weight that gets shifted, not shifted, but like distributed more evenly. Like, I sometimes think of it that way, where it's like, I've got so much weight on my back that if I try to move or even take it off, it could be dangerous. But when I have help, it's still my burden. It's still the weight that I'm carrying. Excuse me. But having those people who can hold that space and just give me, like, take a little bit of that weight off my shoulders as I'm figuring out like what's going on. It just kind of lets me like not wiggle out from under it, but really like maybe get my vision on it in a proper way. So they not only create a space, give me that little like lended strength that lets me see it for what it is, and really realize like, oh, I see how this got on my back a long time ago. And you can say, like, I like how you mentioned how it's got like roots that go all the way, like they go into so many other things. And like once you start to see it, you're almost like, it's almost like looking at a tree and you like notice its beautiful leaves, and your eyes go down, you see the trunk and your eyes keep going down. You're like, this is amazing. This thing is huge. And what am I going to do with this? And you see the roots and you're like, oh, the roots go all around. I almost tripped over that one.
Yeah. Well, and then you think even further down that the roots are as expansive as the tree branches, right? And so when we start to, and oftentimes when we're thinking about beliefs they root off, they go all different directions, and they impact all different things and how we show up and this decisions we're making, how we relate to people, how we relate to spirituality, even like, because my belief really was rooted in my past life of Catholicism and being, born and raised a Catholic. And, I was like, oh, so, interesting. This really relates to why I push against it now. Push against it so strong. I was like, I'm starting to see different things. And then you get to make different choices, which is what I love, is being able to then be like, well, I don't want this belief anymore. I'm going to choose to do something different with it. Or, okay, well, maybe I have to tiptoe a little bit more around this belief because I'm not ready fully. And that's okay too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there are some reflexes that are welcome. Like I still have fond memories of being like a child and having my knee tapped for the first time, and the little kick that happens, that little reflex check, like a tiny little fond memory from being like a super tired. I forget how young, but we're talking like 3 or 4, like, or one of my earlier memories, just having someone do the little tap or whatever, and just being like, my leg moved by itself. That's cool and feels weird and is like a little scary, but also just mostly cool.
Cool.
And then realizing like, just obviously like becoming more and more acquainted with all sorts of other reflexes as I move through my life, and realizing how important it is to look at those and make a choice regarding whether or not I still want them. And this has taken me longer in life to realize that I do have that option to choose what my reflexes are. And if I want to change them, there's certainly going to be some work involved, but they beg a question from me. It's like, do I want this? Do I want to react this way to this thing? If yes, awesome. Then let's build on it. Let's grow it. Let's still keep our eyes on it. If no, how can I change it? Like, where do I even begin? And that first question is what leads to all the rest, and leads to getting the people who can hold space for you, the coach that can help walk you through things, whatever help might be required. It gives you that authority to ask and begin.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because as you said that, I was thinking, I'm terrible. My reflexes don't really do the thing that they're supposed to do. So I have to actually hold my hands tight in order for them to do it.
Really?
Yeah. It was a trick that one of my chiropractor, my old chiropractor taught me. He was like, all right, Jaime, your reflexes, they're not, they're not doing the thing. So, because sometimes you actually can shut them down, right? So you can actually have the reverse of what we're talking about, which is like that forward movement. You can actually shut down, which is also a reflex. And the choice is to actually say, you know what, I'm going to want to re-engage that because I've shut it down. So, you know, if we're thinking about this from like childhood growing up, right? You have tons of curiosity. But if somebody keeps telling you, no, don't do that. Don't look at that. You know, how is that going to show up? You're going to shut down your curiosity. And your reflex is actually to shut down your ultimate reflex, which is the curiosity.
That's such a good point. I love that, because it's not just a matter of like on and off or A and zero, or like this reaction, this reflex, bomb, 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 bomb. There are levels to it. And that I immediately in my head, the words, the no reflex went across the back of my brain, where it's like, ooh, like internalized no's and negativities, dangerous, scary no's, refusals, fear, of course. And the way that stymies like the curiosity and creativity fed reflexes. And so I might be looking at something and I'm not quite sure why. It's like, why don't I react in this way? Or why am I reacting in this way? And there's a whole bunch of them. And I'm like, wait a minute, is there some other reflex that's triggering first, that's preventing all those other reflexes from working the way that they should? And that's obviously, this gets like into really like heady, kind of deep, and I'm about to break the metaphor with the reflexes, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's such an interesting cavern to explore. And it immediately got into my brain. The metaphor shifted to a cavern because it's beautiful and it's dark and it's scary, and you need a team. You need your people with you to explore those dark and scary caverns, because there are just levels to it, and there's so much to learn and so much to explore.
And so many resources that you need, right? Like, I think about when you're caving, which I've never done. But I think about like, all right, you need a light, you need a helmet, you need those pins that climbers use.
Oh, you can get like the carabine, like basically like ropes,
and the carabine. The
carabines. Yeah.
You need water, you need food, right? But oftentimes you don't know that when you first go caving. You need an expert to come in to help you see what all you need, right? What are and what resources are there? And that's what I love about coaching. You know, the more and more I do it, the more and more I start to gather even more resources where I'm like, oh, this will be good. And it might not be good for all my clients, but it's like, hey, I just learned this thing. We're in our conversation. I think this would help you, you know? And it's so fun to get in that space, because you know, they're navigating and exploring their cavern and looking around, and you're like, hey, I've got a new flashlight for you. It does something different, you know?
Or, hey, I know that way, that cavern gets really scary. It's kind of tight. It's really for like, it's more for experts. It's like, it's a really high level. Like I might not go down. I would only go down there with help. So maybe let's go explore this bigger one that has a lot of things we can learn. And so you've got the map. That's like, you know, maybe it's not going to be an exact map, but it's going to be pretty close. It's like, nah, I can see the way that the stalactites or stalagmites are, you know, you basically, you know, I'm making up like caving terminology, because I've never been caving except with a guide. I've never been like just with myself or with people who just kind of didn't know. I was always with like a professional guide and always in caves that were very well like mapped out or whatever, because it's a little scary and it's really fun. It's really beautiful. But yeah, just that expertise where it's just like, do this, don't do that. Make sure you bring this, and this. You should probably, if you can, bring this, and that, because they might come up useful. I've got the map. Somebody else has the map. Everybody knows it. Like all these different things that you wouldn't think of before you started exploring. Somebody else has already thought of, has already done the work, and knows how to translate that to you so that you could begin your own spelunking journey. With spelunking is always a word I've been quite taken with. Spelunking is such a fun word.
It is a fun word. Well, and it's interesting because I think one of the things that, you know, we started the conversation out with is that the you know, engineering and how it's not just a straight line type of thing, and neither is the map. And right, so when we're talking about a map in this context, it's more like, ooh, we just hit, like, I'll sense, oh, we just hit on a topic that might be too deep for you. Right. And so let's table this for a little bit and move it to the side, right? Or you're in a certain situation, like maybe a big meeting's coming up and we're about to have a conversation that's going really deep, that's going to get you in a funk. Let's table it for next week. Right. And so it's not as cut and dry as the map that we're talking about in terms of caving. But it's far more of the coaches knowing and dancing and knowing you and building that trust with you to be like, okay, you're not ready for that yet. Let's keep moving in a different way that still allows you to start breaking down those stories. It still allows you to face fears and see the beauty that is underneath those.
Yeah. And we were talking a little bit, I think before we hit record, about fit and how coaches are such experts at evaluating fit, not just between themselves and a client, or between a client and a job or a role or a team, but also a timing thing where it's like, this might not be the right time for this. And that's one thing that I've always admired about all the good coaches, which is everybody I talk to, because I only talk to good coaches like you, is that there is a plan, an experience that's really grounded in knowledge and education and tried and tested. And it is very much like a roadmap. And what you also get, it's not just the roadmap that sits on your shelf or in your glove box and you use it when you think you need it. You also get active, adaptive guidance. You get someone who's there with you on the journey, very Sherpa-like. I know Sherpa, the guide up Mount Everest, gets thrown out there a lot as a coaching metaphor, and it gets used a lot because it's perfect, because you're really there with the expertise to adapt it to the needs and abilities of the people you're trying to guide. It's both,
and the environment.
And the environment. And
right, because Sherpas have to deal with the environment and be like, ooh, that storm's coming in. We're not going to climb up right now. We're going to stay here. Right. And so I love that, because it really is about how do we navigate and see where things show up, as well as when somebody's ready for a resource. Right. Some people they're not ready for it yet. Okay, great. We're going to hold that back until we see them opening up. You know, I've definitely had clients who we've made an awareness and they were like, I'm not ready to look at it. And it took 6 months later that they said, okay, now I'm ready. You know, and it's giving that space to say, let's get through the clouds in order to get to the place where you're ready. Man,
it's been a half an hour. We've been chatting already.
It doesn't surprise me, Kevin. It doesn't.
Me neither.
We could probably talk for hours.
I'm supremely confident that we could, and I only because of my like podcast host trained instinct do my eyes dart up to the clock, because I'm leaning in. I'm like, we're talking about trees, we're talking about caves, we're talking about mountains, we're tying it all into like this is the kind of stuff that I love, because it's the high level, like 30,000 foot, like coaching is like XYZ. And we're also going right into like, and this is why coaches specifically do this for you, because it's important, because Y and Z, because it's important that timing be correct. It's important that we not go too deep, too fast, not just because it might be something that would affect you personally, but because you also might have a big meeting coming up, or you might have like a big keynote speech coming up, and we need you to be solid. You know, it's like it's like 30,000 feet down on the ground, 30,000 feet boots on the ground, and it's the ability to go back and forth.
Big picture and the tactical. Big picture, tactical. Yeah.
Not super separated, like like joined together at the same time. It's really like It's, again, I know I like to use that paradox, like thinking of paradoxes where it's like, you think these two ideas don't really belong together, but in fact they really, really, really do. And how much coaching represents that fusion, that wedding of things that often are thought of as paradoxical, or at least close to opposite. But it's like, no, no, no. You could have, it could be both. In fact, it should be both. And I'm going to show you how it is both. And we're going to find out together what that's going to look like for you. And it's just like, it's so, I'm getting like mild tingles just thinking about it, because you were sharing that story about that one friend that you helped, and just as just like that feeling that you got just talking about it, just remembering it. I was like, that's why coaching is so powerful, and why so many good people are drawn to it.
Yes, yes, and I think it's interesting too, because the paradoxal is also in leadership, right? And we forget that so often. We forget that there is a paradox, and that we have to dance in both of it, in all of it. And that both and is so critical, and yet we put blinders on.
Yep. Because sometimes the dark's more comfortable, even if it's scary.
It can be more comfortable. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Before I let you go and wrap this up, because we could do one of those 3-hour long podcast deep dives here. What's popping in 2023? When we're recording this, it's already halfway through February. So probably be releasing later on in March. Well, it depends. We kind of shuffle our schedule around depending on our backlog. But what's new? What's happening? What's popping? Where can people find out more about you? Like, where are you best able to be connected with if somebody wants to start a conversation like this, which they probably do? So yeah, just give me all the good stuff about
the good stuff
in 2023. Give me all the good stuff.
So the first good thing that I'm super excited about is I am about to launch, and this is the first time I'm talking about it, is my Phoenix program, which is for anybody who actually wants to dive deeper into that cavern. It is literally focused in on let's start flashing, putting the lights on. Let's start looking in the dark in order for us to then make choice. In order for us to choose, where do we want to go next, and how do we want to fly? So this is really for anybody who is just sick and tired of self-doubt and overthinking, and is ready to create their life. But to do that, we have to break down our fears. So that's the first thing I'm super excited about. The next thing is I've just launched a LinkedIn series called Shining Bright Women Leaders Perspectives. And I'm interviewing different women, and we're talking about all sorts of different topics. So our first topic is about diversity, leadership, and allyship. The next one is about the myth of a supermom. That's a good one. It's going to be a good one. And I'm so excited. I should have hit record when her and I touched base a couple of weeks ago, because it was already so good. And I've a bunch more teed up that I'm super excited about. So if you want to find me there, Jaime Martin, super easy on LinkedIn. Otherwise, JaimeMartinCoaching.com.
Perfect. So that's the two best places to find you. The LinkedIn feed's going to be popping. Going to be lots of great stuff there. And then the website obviously is the central hub where everybody can find you everywhere else.
Everywhere else. Yep.
And is there more information about the Phoenix program on your website as well?
There is.
Okay. I'll make sure that links to everything, every little page of it goes into the show notes, so people can find out more and opt in and see what ashes they can rise from next.
Yes, exactly.
Oh man, this has been freaking great. Can I have you back like later on, like as spring turns to summer? I feel like once every like 3 to 6 months feels right to have a conversation like this. And I'm really enjoying, like, because we've already gotten to know each other. We're like, our conversations go in cool places. And so we were able to like jump right back in. It's almost like picking up where we left off.
It did feel like it.
I would love to do this again. Yeah.
Let's do it.
And I hope the audience feels the same. I imagine you do. It's just, these conversations are great. I delight in them so much. I get so much to think about and chew on and go back and forth with. It really is. I feel like this is representative of what coaching is like. A lot of people might think of coaching as formalized, or it's like they have some preconceived notions about what it might be, which is fine. Everybody does that. Coaching is a lot like this, where it's just a lot of exploration. It's obviously there's a little more stakes when you're being coached, because you're the one who's like really kind of digging deep and we're exploring your cavern. So that's gonna be a little scarier, but it's really a lot like this. And that light, that like giddiness, that warmth that we just talked about, even just talking about successful coaching experiences, that is real. And that is for everyone. I just want to reiterate that to the audience. This can be, and it should be, is for everyone. So find out more about Jaime. See if she's a good fit.
Yes.
If she's not the right coach for you, she'll know it, and she'll tell
Send you somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I've got plenty of coaches to refer.
So do not let anything stop you from reaching out if you feel like you're ready, because it's probably time. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being here with us. Thank you one more time, Jaime, for being here with me. This is so great. I'm so tickled. I'm so delighted. And yeah, we will talk, and we will get to talk to all of you very soon.